Contemporary dance has always like been called dance artists.
I don't know. It makes you feel like more. It's like GP or
it's the most contemporary dance thing to not be called a contemporary, to be like I'm a dance artist.
Yeah,
but it is actually a good term, I think.
It is because I think it's more broad.
Mm-hmm.
It includes a lot of things.
Yeah.
It could, you are not just dancing. You do a lot of things. You act sometimes, and
yeah,
you know what I mean. It includes more things.
I think it's good in the sense that like we often do a wide variety of jobs as dancers,
Yeah.
and so it helps encompass those. I also found it useful. The artist Hitain Patel, he gave me really good advice early on, where he said, call yourself what you want your work to be received as.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Which is really smart. So he recommended to me that because I make dance work for the gallery, he recommended that I call myself an artist instead of a choreographer.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Because he said if you call yourself an artist, people tend to see your work more as art instead of as dance or choreography purely. So he's like, if you're trying to go for this thing that's mixed medium, meant for the gallery, is meant to be seen more as like almost performance art. He's like, calling yourself an artist will make people see your work
as an artwork.
Yeah, as an artwork instead of as just movement. Otherwise, they tend to look at your work and only really see the movement aspect of the choreography, even if you've been involved in all these other decisions.
But also because you're not like choreographing a music video, you're not just doing steps, and you got all the idea around it, and it's different. I think it's different, and I think it's the same for contemporary dancer. I think if you say that, it makes you think like, right, you just dance, you know what I mean? But we are not just dancing. We do a lot of things. We have all a creative process behind it. Because when you do a project and you work with a choreographer or an artistic director, you don't just do steps.
Yeah.
You've been asked to create material and to create a product and something more, it's deeper than just doing steps. That's what I think. So in that way, I think I'm not just a mover,
right?
A dancer. I'm a dance artist. That's what I think. I don't want to be like, I'm cool.
It's so much of what makes a dancer a really good dancer isn't them hitting the 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Oh, absolutely not.
Like
I'm not able to hit that.
There's so much things that are like really difficult to put on. One of the things that I'm finding really interesting and I'm looking for more when I watch work now is looking for what's it called? Stage presence.
Oh
yeah. It wasn't something I thought about a lot originally, but some dancers, regardless of how they move, they have amazing presence. And they have a certain way of being on stage that just makes you want to watch them. And it's really difficult to say what that is or why that is. But some dancers really, really have it. And other dancers, they're technically very gifted, but they don't have the same stage presence for me.
Oh, yeah, of course. I've got a lot of examples in my mind. I'm not going to say names, but like really famous companies and like amazing dancers that physically and technically, when you see them, they look like aliens, like, oh my God, how can they do that? I'm a dancer, I cannot do that. And I won't be able to do that ever.
Yeah.
But then after like 5 minutes, I'm like really bored and I'm like, it's enough. Yeah. I can just see like 5 minutes of a show like this and it's enough. Whereas when I go to see some, like even in galleries or museums or some artworks, and you see these people, it feels like you can really touch their souls,
Yeah.
And maybe they're just there standing and lifting an arm and you're like, oh my goodness, this is like amazing.
Yeah. But they're really watchable for some reason.
They attract your attention and they brings you into another world just by the way they are standing there and moving and watching at you. So I'm like, that's what amazed me. I'm really amused by this.
I think a big part of it for me is commitment. Is it's like just commitment to the moment, and it doesn't matter if it's something really small, like you say, like just an arm movement. It's like really committing to that with your whole being. Like you say, you're not just moving, but there's usually some internal process going on as well, and clarity as well, to be honest. And I think that's something that a great choreographer or director has a big role in, is helping provide the why behind the dance, and that was like something, Pina Bausch talked about, which is like how she's like, I'm not interested in how you move, I'm interested in why you move.
There is something that I always try to ask myself when I've been giving like tasks to create some work for choreographers. The very important question I do to myself is, why am I doing it? And sometimes I ask it to the choreographer if I don't get an answer by myself. So it happened like very recently. We were just changing a little piece of a show, and then at one point I was like, I don't get why I'm doing it. So I had to ask it to the choreographer. So what's the reason why you do it? Otherwise I cannot do it. I cannot create, because it's like something really important and that gives meaning to it. Even if it's not understandable a lot of the time. So why is him lifting the arm? We don't know. But because he knows really well on stage why he's doing it, then it makes a lot of sense.
And I find, particularly these days, when I see work by choreographers, or when I see choreography and it's not resonating with me, or it's not working, it's usually that. I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't know why these people are dancing. And I think when there's a really clear reason why they're dancing, emotionally or whatever, if there's some drive there, it's very enticing. But when I see really beautiful movement, but I don't really know what they're there for, I'm just kind of switch off, and it's
What I think is the moment when you switch off, when you are in the theater and as an audience member, when you switch off, for me is a failure, because it's like, right, so this is not art. It's like when you watch a television and you think about your business, because it's nothing that attracts you like in a very deep way. So
let me introduce you to the audience. So hello, lovely dance people, and welcome to David's Dance Podcast. I'm here with a dancer who I'm currently on tour with. We are touring a piece called Same Same But Different, which is a family dance theater piece by Sonia Sabri company. It's a piece about celebrating our differences, and we're doing a tour of different libraries. So me and this dancer have gotten a chance to get to know each other over this time. She's also currently just started a new tour with Wriggle Dance of Squidge. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But we're very happy to welcome this very talented dancer to the podcast, Selene Travaglia. Selene, welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
So we jumped in really quick. But yeah, it's great to have you on the podcast, and I'm glad we finally got a chance to sit down and do this, because Selene and I keep having really good conversations over the past sort of like month or so that we've been working together, and I keep thinking like, oh, like I got to remember that one for the podcast because like that's a really good conversation. And one of the first ones I want to like jump back to was a conversation you and I had on the train. And I asked you, what choreography or what dance piece have you done that you felt like you either learned a lot from or changed your view of choreography? And you talked about this. I'll let you speak about it and introduce it properly. But you talked about this kind of improvisational structure that you did during your time at Transitions. Could you tell us a little bit about that dance piece and how that changed how you think about choreography.
Yeah, so basically, I was part of Transitions Dance Company in 2017, and we were meant to have 3 different pieces made by 3 different choreographers. And we started with other 2 choreographers, and the process was, kind of a normal process that I was used to do. And then when this choreographer, he's called Christian Duarte from Brazil, when he arrived into the studio, he started to create this piece. And I really, at the beginning, it was quite normal because he brought this like massive paper and pencils, and we just start like putting ideas on paper and drawing and brainstorming about what he wanted to work on, which I don't really remember what it was. I don't remember the theme, and it looked quite normal at the beginning, but then we were meant to...
So during that time, so you were writing ideas down, all the dancers were writing down ideas on this big piece of paper, and that was all your response to maybe a prompt or a theme that he gave you?
Yeah, he gave a theme, which I don't really remember what it was, and we were just kind of brainstorming, which is something that you usually do at the beginning of a creative process.
Yeah.
But then this thing kept going on for like 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then we were meant to have just 5 weeks with him, and then we were meant to be on tour with this piece. And then when we were into the 3rd week of brainstorming and just trying on something in the space, but like total improvising them, and just you try something and then you feedback it, and then you just talk about what you did, but without setting anything, literally without having anything in our hands.
Yeah.
And when we started the 4th week, I was like, what's going on? What is the piece? We need time to rehearse, and we are we're meant to be on tour in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
With a triple bill.
And we don't know what the choreography is.
We don't know what the choreography is. We don't have any costumes, because the costume designer, usually they are there and they wait for some, they wait to see how the piece is going on, and then they start putting ideas on it and crafting, the costumes, and then they didn't know what to do. And I started to be really worried about it, because it looked something really messy.
Yeah.
And then we just kept doing this session of improvisation with some rules in it, like slow motion and some gesture in it. But then every time we were doing a new improvisation, of course it was different, and the whole cast was in it for 30 minutes. And then we just kept doing that. And when we arrived by the end of the period we were meant to rehearse, so the 5th week, he was like, right, that's the piece then. And I was like, what?
What piece?
What piece? I mean, what are you talking about? Yeah. And basically, that was his creative process. And we went on tour with an improvised 30-minute piece.
Wow.
And it was really demanding. I mean, it just, my mind was like shocked, because I couldn't imagine myself being on stage for 30 minutes, improvising a piece on different stages. And for like, I think we did 21 tour dates. So for 21 times around Europe, just improvising.
Yeah.
And of course, when you improvise, and we were 12 members in the cast. So the whole cast on stage, 30 minutes, and you, of course, you don't know what the other are doing. So you're like, right, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what will happen. Yeah. It might be a total disaster, And we were allowed to go off stage and to go into the audience. And that was another thing that really worried me, because I was like, I don't know how the audience will react to it. Yeah. And I had few weird situations where the audience was a little bit rude with me. They were talking to me. Some men were like a little bit, not really kind with me. And it was really strange, because you were performing, so you couldn't say, oh, shut up. Yeah. Don't look at me. You know what I mean? It was a really strong experience for me. And
so the final piece was like, it was like a structured improvisation, or it was like improvisation, but I guess it was what people had different. You had the themes that you were working on in the improvisation, and then you had like rules, like you described.
We had few rules. So like the main one was that everything was in an extra slow motion.
Mm-hmm.
So it really helped people to feel themselves like immersed in a strange world, because when for 30 minutes everything around you is like slow-mo, really slow, and also like facial expression need to be really slow. I think audience was like, you were in the audience once, so I think you can remember it. And that was the main rule.
I distinctly remember one of the dancers like slipping on the stairs when she came out into the audience, and then like laughing in slow motion.
Yeah,
in response,
totally.
Which was just the funniest thing.
And I honestly don't remember all the rules, but definitely slow-mo was one, the main important, the most important. And then another one was we had to start really basic, and then we could add some kind of emotion in it. So we could really have some facial expression. There were some people of the cast that had some props they could take out. So like there was an apple. I don't remember the others, but definitely an apple. So there was one that at one point you just turned and she was eating an apple in slow-mo. And at one point, after a while, we could go into the audience. So we could break that barrier between stage and audience. But everything was kind of left to us. So, and it was really interesting, especially for me, because I was really used to have set material and to be secure about what I was doing. And there I was totally lost. The first tour dates, I was like, oh, I'm freaking out because I don't know what to do. And that was really challenging. But then it switched my way of seeing contemporary dance as well.
Right.
And I really at the end, that was my favorite piece. I was enjoying it so much and challenging myself. And then now, after a few years, like thinking back about it, I really appreciate what he did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I was really young about that time. And
there's something about like improvisation that always I think works really well as like for choreography or for work, not necessarily choreography. But one of the things that like is so different about watching someone improvise is there's a lot of like really subtle muscle movements that are just kind of natural and part of people's cadence that they do when they improvise that they don't do when it's choreography.
Yeah.
When there's choreography and, you're like, okay, the movement is to move my arm from here to here. I find people do it, but they tend to lock down the rest of the body in the process. Whereas when you're improvising, I might do that, but like there might be just like something with like my toe flicking out, or like the way that my spine moves a certain way while I do it. I just find often with improvisation, there's like a certain kind of organicness and subtlety and complexity to the way that people move that is really hard to accomplish in set choreography. By telling people like this is the step, because if you were to choreograph something like that, to be like, oh, and at this point you like turn your foot out ever so slightly here while you do it, it's almost too subtle. But that's something that I really appreciate about improvisational dancers, but also when people make work that's structured by improvisation, you often see work with more nuance to it.
Yeah, that's what I really enjoy about the creative process. The process I enjoy the most is when I work with a choreographer or more than one choreographers, because sometimes they are co-directing. And the way they create the choreography is actually starting from an improvisation, film it or taking a lot of notes about it, and then taking stuff from there and working on it. That's for me that's the most natural way to create material and actually create interesting material.
Right.
That material that you would have never done otherwise.
Yeah. It's also often sometimes the nicest material to dance as dancers.
Oh, yeah.
Because when it's created in the body as opposed to in the mind.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Then it often feels nicer when you're performing it because it was made to be danced in the body. Whereas when people have ideas, and it's totally fine to make choreography this way. Very interesting choreography is made in a very intellectual way of like, you're going to move here and here, like very technical ways. But, sometimes that kind of choreography looks amazing, but it's quite jarring as a dancer to do it. Because, because it wasn't created in a body.
I know. So, and sometimes when you do that, you can find really inorganic movement in your body that actually looks really interesting. That if you had tried to create them without improvising, just really rationally thinking about it, you would never achieve them.
You would never come up with that stuff.
No.
Yeah.
That's what I find really interesting about improvisation.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not a big fan of improvisation in general, because I find it really challenging.
Right.
You really need to be there with your mind, and I think I'm a kind of a lazy dancer in a way, because every time I have to improvise at the beginning, I'm like, oh, this is really heavy. How can I do? How can I improvise for like 15 minutes around the theme? But then at the same time, I know it's the best way to create interesting material. So,
I find it sometimes that also has to do with the way, because we both went to Larvin.
Yeah.
And like, I also have a background in like freestyle dances, like breakdance, street dance, salsa. And one of the things that I found, there's a really specific way that Larvin has an approach to like improvisation. And I find it can be very good, but it's very much improvisation to make choreography rather than improvisation as a means in itself, as an end in itself. In particular, sometimes when I'm working with contemporary dancers, one of the things I find is they do a lot of exploring through improvisation, but not always a lot of dancing. And sometimes if I'm working with them, I will do things to try to get them out of their heads and try to stop them from exploring. Like, exploring is one way of being in the body, but sometimes I'm like, stop exploring, start dancing. And actually you will find as you dance, new things will happen that more that don't necessarily emerge when you're in this kind of like.
And I can tell that one of the things that really I've got really impressed in my mind is when you led a warm-up class with Sonia when we were rehearsing, and then you started with an improvisation.
Oh yeah.
And usually when we do that, when I have to do that, in my mind, I'm always like, oh no, starting the day with an improvisation is gonna kill me,
Yeah.
But then,
I'm glad you didn't tell me that before I started.
Yeah, because I always respect people practice. So you might, when I do class, I start with like pliés and whatever, and you might think like, oh my goodness, no, please, come on. So I always respect, but because you started in a way that it wasn't like, just feel your body and move and explore, which I totally hate. You just said, okay, take this finger and start moving it. For me, it was like, oh, this is really cool. I never thought about this finger.
That finger,
And it made me move, like, in a really interesting way for myself.
Right.
That's something that really, like, changed my way of thinking. Like, maybe improvisation is cool for warming up.
Yeah.
And it really, like, something that impressed me.
Oh, thank you.
And so I got what you are saying about not just exploring your body and your breath, which is something that really it's really boring for me, and it doesn't warm me up.
It has its place, but I think
so I would steal it, just to let you know. I will use that thing.
Oh, go for it.
And this finger is lovely.
I find when I tend to so for the audience, like my main sort of warm-up when I do like warm-ups with people is we do usually 20-30 minutes of improvisation, and we go through the body. So I pick a body part and they have to draw in the space, like their body part is a crayon or something. But I usually try to pick body parts that people don't usually dance with or think of dancing with. But I do tend to find when people dance from their ring finger that it looks really flamenco-y.
No, it didn't.
And I find that there's a really nice detail there's a nice thing about there being something really specific about the hands, having make a really specific choice, that I find like it comes alive.
So I totally got what you said about that kind of improvisation, you know, to make it interesting, the way you can use your body, and not just like a meditation thing within yourself. Feel your breath, feel your body. That doesn't work for me. It's really personal, but you know.
I know what you mean. Yeah. What was I going to ask you? I was going to ask you about. Actually, I want to ask you about theatricality. So one of the things that I've learned about you over this time is like you're a really expressive dancer, and you're really great at like using your face and like bringing a lot of emotion to the table when you dance. Almost like the kind of not acting, but the performance side of dance. I think you're really talented at.
Thank you.
And also looking at your CV, you tend to pick like works that or dance pieces that are quite theatrical or have a real theatrical element to them. Was that like a conscious choice, or is there a moment that you did you just gravitate towards that kind of work, or was there a moment that you realized that was like that kind of work, of dance theater, was something that you were sort of interested in and would actively pursue?
So basically, when I started my professional studies in Milan, and I need to be honest, I didn't really enjoy that 3 years of professional training for multiple reasons. But the way that professional training was built, it was really focused on theatricality and bringing basically your soul on stage and putting it in front of everything else. I can tell it because during my last year, I think my third year, the company that was led by the artistic director of the academy, they create a show. It was a site-specific show, and basically it was the stage was the academy, and they were basically dancing the different rooms of the academy, and the audience you just had to follow them through this pathway in this building, and in a way you were like totally immersed in their emotion and what they were like feeling that moment in that room. That was something totally new for me. I was really young. I was like 18. And then I went to see this show and I cried just by seeing some scenes.
Well, it's to see the same show that you were in.
I wasn't in. I was just an audience member. So the company, I was just a student there. And there was, of course, the company of the academy, dancers that they studied in this academy, and then they ended up being company members, and the artistic director was the same of the academy.
Gotcha.
So I knew they were doing this show, and then I just went to see it as an audience member. I was still a student, so I felt really like I don't know anything about dance still. I was just and I went to see it, and I could really feel like they were putting their soul like there. They were totally there. Doesn't matter about they were really good dancers, but that was something amazing. And then I ended up being crying for some scenes I was seeing, and then that made me think like that's the dancer I want to be.
Right.
I want to be a performer that when people see me on stage, if I will be a dancer, if I will achieve my goal to be a professional dancer, I want that when people see me on stage, they feel what I feel, and I want to make them feel something, not just see my legs and how good I am moving.
Yeah.
So I think that was the thing that made me switch, and I really focus on theatricality, and I'm really trying to bring emotions there. And yeah, that was the main thing that made me switch to.
Also hones in on the value of like going to see work, and trying to see like as much work as possible.
Yeah.
Because I think it can really help us as dancers, like you say, hone in, or choreographers, whatever it is, hone in on like what makes it click for you.
Yeah.
Like what are you resonating with, or what doesn't resonate with you at all.
Yeah.
I do find with dance, more than other things, it's night and day. I find when I tend to watch work, like dance work, I'm either completely entranced and like into it, or I'm just like so bored, like I can't watch it. Like, and I don't really have that with other mediums. If I watch like a TV show, like I find most of it tends to sit in the middle of like interested, oh, this is a bit boring. But dance for me is always one end or the other. It's either amazing or it's awful.
Here we go. It's like when you see, it happens to me, especially when I'm really tired. I see a film and I cry because maybe also for something really simple. I just cry, because it's like moving me for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And then that's what I want the audience to be when they see a dance piece, because it cannot just happen for a film. It can happen in the theater as well. So then, for example, I'm touring with Squid, and it's a children's show, so there's not like big dramas or but we are touching really important themes like friendship, being left alone. There's a moment where I have a solo, and basically my friend, he just left me because I went like too far with a joke, and she just left me alone.
Yeah.
And then I'm desperate because I realized that I'm alone. I don't have any friends anymore. So I'm drawing my my own friend, which is a stick man basically, and I try to dance with him. And then at the beginning he's dancing with me, so I'm like quite pleased, like okay, I found another friend, fine. But then I realized I really need a hug. And I try to hug the stick man, but the stick man doesn't hug you. He cannot move. And then I go back to this sadness of being alone. And I can really see on children's faces this empathy.
Yeah.
They are really sad. They feel it. And then at one point, the other character, she comes back on stage. And in a way, I say sorry to her. I apologize. And then I do this. And she thinks about it, and then she pulls me and she hugs me. And every time we have that scene, which is really simple, just a hug, you can hear from the audience.
You can hear the tears hitting the floor.
You can hear like this, from parents, and they are adults, So it's nothing, really complicated. It's just a really simple scene, but it's so powerful, and the way probably we acted. You can tell they've been moved by it. So that's what I want when I perform, because otherwise I feel empty. I feel like I'm just, doing nothing. So,
and particularly for like, children's dance theatre, which is like what we've been doing with this piece with Sonia Sabri company, but also you're doing with the piece you just described, Squidge, how it's kids theater, but like you can still really delve into like sometimes some quite heavy things, or things that kids understand, and not treating the kids as simple is really important, and actually dealing with things like that, like you talk about like loneliness, which we've all dealt with at some point in our lives, and a lot of kids deal with, whether they've moved school or, had to, make friends again, or whatever that journey is. But actually, delving into those kind of themes is actually really, really important.
I think being able to make them, you know, having an emotional journey wherever they see, it's the best goal you can have as an artist. I mean, personally, that's what I really enjoy about this job, and it gives me satisfaction. And what was it? When we were on tour, I think 2 weeks ago. Do you remember that little boy at the end of the show? He just ran from the audience towards me and he just hugged me.
Aww.
And I couldn't take him off. He was just running, and it means like we gave him something. I don't know what, but we just made a gift to him, probably. For me, that's rewarding. It's just, okay. I achieved what I wanted. You know what I mean? That's life.
Just like connect. If nothing else, just connecting with the audience. I think it's one of the strengths of the piece that, like, we've been doing same but different, is because there's so much in the piece. There's a little bit for everybody. And it's been really nice, like, after the show, going and talking to the kids about it. And also how it often just becomes like an opportunity for them to just tell me what they're proud of, like in themselves, to share like the things that they're excited about. You know, for them to be like, you know, I also play guitar and I've been playing it.
But yesterday you were doing breakdance. And there was this little boy. He was breakdancing, like he was trying to do breakdance in the audience. For me, it was like amazing. It was like, look.
And just how it becomes a moment for. It's not just us performing, but that kind of post-show talk's really great because it's a chance for the kids to also just share their excitement and share like the things that they're proud of, which is really important for kids to be able to like share those things and like have someone they look up to be like, hey, that's awesome.
And the same for adults, because it's exactly the same. They are more difficult to move because they can put filters which children cannot.
Definitely.
So if a child feels moved by a scene, he might tell it like straight away, or he might cry, or he might like laugh really loudly. But an adult tend to put a filter, take it in, and hold his position. But then when you see them moved as well, it's like, got you. You know what I mean? I made my job.
Gotcha. Yeah. It's nice. Tell us a little bit more about like Squidge and what can people expect when they come to see the show.
So Squid is a really interactive performance. Audience, basically, when they step into the room, they have an interactive pod. Usually it's like one per family, or anyway, one every 5 people. And Squid is about mainly the sense of touch. So we have a lot of different textures on stage, and starting from there, we basically explore different feelings. So from physical, exploration, we bring them into a kind of emotional journey, which is something really interesting, I think, because it's something like 100%. They are immersed into the performance, like physically, because these interactive pods they have 3 boxes, and then in each box you have some of the texture that we have on stage. So every
like the different materials.
For example, there is one scene when we have slime on stage, and as soon as we take the slime out, the slime box of each interactive pod lights up, and they can put their hands into the slime, so they can really have a feel of what we feel on stage. But at the same time, on top of that, we have an emotional journey we go through, and so they can feel really immersed in this world, which is called Squid World. And it's really nice how we manage to break the barrier between us and the audience, because a lot of the time we go into the audience, we play with them. At one point, they can control us on stage, so it's them moving us, and everything happens really naturally. throughout the piece. So I think it's a really nice experience for a child and for a grown up as well.
Oh, nice.
And yeah.
So you'll be touring that through April. When's your last tour date for that? Do you know?
The last tour date is on the 31st of May, I think.
31st of May.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's a long tour. We've just done 2 venues now. We have about 30 venues around the country.
And if people want to find out more about it, where's best to find out about shows or tickets?
If you go on the Wriggle Dance Theatre website, you can find a page where you have all the venues. And on each venues, you have the link where you can book the tickets. Some of them are already sold out.
Yeah.
But I think you can find some spots available.
Sweet.
Yeah.
We'll put a link down below.
Yeah,
and if people want to follow you, where's the best place to find out about what you're up to?
I think Instagram is a good platform. Is my name, Selene Travaglia, or sele.nene. And or Facebook, Selene Travaglia. So, yeah.
Super. And by the time this comes out, our tour of Same But Different will be just coming to a close. But if you want to check out Sonia Sabri Company and what they're up to, definitely do. They're an amazing company based here in Birmingham. They do quite a wide variety of choreographic teaching projects as well and community-based projects. So we will put a link to their Instagram down below as well. But yeah, this was a great podcast, and thank you, Selene, for joining me.
Thank you for having me, and see you on stage.
See you there.